I'm sure you've caught yourself in situations where an idea has made perfect sense to you, and then you actually say it. The idea that was logical, persuasive, that you wanted to bring out, this could be an argument, some type of persuasive statement, or just your opinion on something. When you actually say it, you run into three major issues. The first one is the delivery. The delivery is a mess. It's all over the place. It's stuttery. You seem to use either way too many words or too little words to describe what it is that you want to say. The second problem that you end up running into is how people perceive your opinion. Because it's so stuttery, it's so messy, and you keep going back and forth, people will end up thinking that you either lack knowledge, are wrong, or just flat out can't communicate properly. The third thing that you're going to run into is your perception of yourself. Because that thing that you thought was super smart came out sounding really dumb at work, you end up thinking that you might be a problem or that your idea might suck. But in reality, it actually has nothing to do with any of that. Your idea might have been perfectly sound, or dare I say, actually good. What you struggle with is impromptu communication. You don't know how to structure or deliver or even organize your ideas properly. And this is a skill that anyone can build. My name is Irtaza. I've spent the last couple years being a professional debate and public speaking coach. I've had years of competitive debate and public speaking experience, and I'm a full-time debate and public speaking coach with the Soft Skills Academy here at Bangkok. I've coached clients from around the world in various different industries, and the problem that they often run into, whether it's job interviews, presentations, or handling some type of negotiation, is they don't know how to communicate on the fly. And that's a skill that many of them were able to develop with a little bit of training. Right now in this video, I'm going to offer you three different things. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to study a structuring technique, something that you can use literally right now to start becoming better at this. The second thing is I'm going to go through various different practice techniques that you can use so that you actually do the work from this video. And thirdly, what I want you guys to do is to go outside, practice this. This could be with your friends, your family, or even just recording yourself. And I want you to come back to this video and comment your experiences so that everybody else can learn from, how you used it, which situation you used it in, and how it was helpful to you. Let's start off with the CRE method. The CRE method is basically an acronym. So the C stands for claim, the R stands for reasoning, and the E stands for examples. So I'm going to go through this one by one. Let's start with the claim. So whenever you're communicating with people, what you want to do is establish a claim that is concise, confidently delivered, and narrow. Now, what do I mean by narrow? There's a few things over here. When you communicate with people, try to make sure that you avoid open-ended statements as much as possible. And this is where, ironically, people who are very knowledgeable at a subject can struggle very hard communicating that subject to anybody. So let's take somebody who is in finance, right? And they've been in finance for about 10, 20 years. And somebody asks them the question just on the spot, like, hey, I want to get into investing. Like, what can you tell me about it? That's a very open-ended question. But instead of asking for a clarification, like, what type of investments are you looking into? Have you had any experience before? They just blurt out an answer. What they're going to do is they're going to try to say too much in very little time. That's where they're going to make a very big mistake. That's when you stutter. That's when you say way too much. That's when you go in circles and you can't land your point. And it gives you the impression that you might be a little dumb. So don't do that at all. Here's the way to fix that. Make your claims very narrow and specific. That will make it much easier for you to think of multiple reasons to justify, explain, persuade, or prove that specific claim. So I'll give you an example. I'm just going to make this up. Let's say we're talking about cryptocurrency, okay? And I want to make the claim that, I'm not a fan of cryptocurrencies. But to criticize something as a whole, or to even praise something as a whole, is very difficult. So I'm going to say cryptocurrencies are a dangerous investment. Okay, so that's my claim. It's very specific. If instead of this, I said something like, cryptocurrencies are bad, that would get me in trouble. Because bad in what sense? Bad for who? Like what aspects of negativity do I want to highlight with respect to cryptocurrency? I'm going to run into a lot of problems if I tried it just like that. So instead, what I want to do is I want to say, I think cryptocurrencies are a dangerous investment. And then I can come up with 2, 3, even more reasons very easily because I have created an umbrella for the amount of things that I can think of. So when you say this out loud, for example, fast food is dangerous for children, right? Or fast food is bad because it causes addiction problems. Something specific like that makes it much easier for you to then explain the reasons behind it versus just coming up with generic open-ended statements. It's kind of like in sales. When you walk into an Apple store, there's like 30 different reasons why you should buy an iPhone. But a good salesman isn't going to highlight all of those 30 reasons because, our short-term memory isn't the best. We don't have the ability to conceptualize, to understand so much information at once. So if you ask them, what phone would you recommend? The first thing they ask is, who are you? Right? So let's say you are you're 19, you're 20, you're getting into content creation, and a good salesperson will only focus on the camera. That's the only thing they're going to do. They'll tell you the camera's amazing, the social media applications are very optimized for the iPhone's system, and they're just going to focus predominantly on that. Now, there's other things they could talk about, the processing power, the speed, micro tasking or whatever. They won't do any of that because you're not interested in it. So they know they have a much better chance persuading you if they focus on something narrow and specific. So try that out with your communication. Practice coming up with claims that are essentially just assertions that are very specific to one thing. And that's going to make it easy for you to do a good job over here. Whether you're persuading somebody, you're communicating an idea to someone, try it that way. The second thing we're going to do is talk about reasoning. Now, in the CRE, reasoning is where you explain that claim in more detail. And a good rule of thumb is the rule of 3. Every time you want to state multiple reasons, do not go more than 3. This is the gold standard because the moment you start to juggle too many different ideas is when people start to not really follow you very well. And it's very easy to overestimate our ability to communicate a specific message. We will think we can pull this off, but in reality, it's much harder to do. In fact, a very prominent journalist, Mehdi Hassan, in his book, Never Lose an Argument, actually talks about this in an entire chapter. He quotes various different experts from multiple fields who have stated that our short-term memory isn't all that good, especially when we're communicating to people on the spot. But we all want to be persuasive. We all want to sound smart and articulate when we communicate. So bring your points down to a perfect number that you can manage very easily. So no more than 3 reasons to prove why a specific claim is true. Let's experiment with this. Let's say, so this is a topic I was talking about with my coworkers earlier on, because we're all in our 20s. And the question is whether or not people in their 20s should have a work-life balance. I was of the opinion that they shouldn't. And you can agree, disagree with this, it doesn't matter. But let's talk about how I would go about making the claim. So if I said a work-life balance is bad for people in their 20s, you could pull it off, but it's not exactly the most persuasive thing to do. Instead, what you want to do is focus on one specific area. Now, don't worry about finding the best possible claim. That's not how it works. You find any claim and then you make it good with reasoning. So I would take something like, a work-life balance could hurt a young person's career. Here are 3 reasons why that's true. Number 1, a work-life balance means that you would spend a lot more time outside of work with hobbies, with your friends, and that means you're less productive overall. Number 2 is that a work-life balance would mean that there's less amounts of skills that you acquire because there's less hours you work in a day, which would mean that your career growth gets slowed down as a result of it. Number 3, having too much of a work-life balance would slow down your growth in a company, which can make you a little too replaceable too quickly. And that's why I think it's particularly dangerous for young people. Whether you agree or disagree, it's very easy to do if you have 3 reasons. All right? And it's much more persuasive that way too, because I'm only focusing on one specific aspect of it. But let's say I was to do the flip, the opposite, and I was going to say a work-life balance is good. I can't just say a work-life balance is good for young people. Once again, I have to make sure that my assertion is narrow. So I would take something like, a work-life balance makes young people more productive. Here are 3 reasons why that's true. Number 1, more time with friends and family improves your mental health. Better mental health means better clarity at work, so you can actually perform more. Number 2, a work-life balance doesn't just mean that you hang out at, unproductive locations outside of work. It also means that you explore your own interests outside of work. So you might actually find alternative career options that are better for you. And number 3, a work-life balance generally means that you're going to make sure that there's less amounts of hours at work, but you know that you have to get a certain amount of things done. So you are more productive with those hours than if you just spent all day in the office. Done. Again, once again, if you agree, disagree, doesn't matter. It's so much easier to come up with things on the spot when your assertion or your claim is very specific to a certain subject matter. So practice this going forward. Try to make sure your claims are narrow. It's going to be much more rewarding for you. The E in CRE stands for examples. Now, examples don't have to be at the end all the time. They can be a part of your reasoning too, but this is just the cleanest way to do it. When you're narrating an example, you could use data, statistics, literally anything, but what I would recommend that you do is practice narrating personal experiences or experiences of people that you know. Now, this is anecdotal evidence. It's not the best, but the goal isn't to be, the guy who has the best amount of data. We're practicing communication. When you practice narrating personal experiences or stories, what you do is you get better at the skill of storytelling. And this is a very lucrative skill. It forces you to use a lot of emotions, to get a bit more animated, and to be able to tell a story chronologically. All of these things are important skills. So when you use the CRE, in the E part, always narrate a personal experience that relates to whatever your claim was. It does a much better job persuading people because we're hardwired to process stories better than we can process just large amounts of data. So to quickly summarize, claim, keep it narrow, specific. In your reasoning, no more than 3 points. Always make sure to number those points so you go through them one at a time. And then you move on to your examples, and this is where you can narrate any data, statistics, or personal experiences. The next part of this video, I want to teach you guys how to put this into practice. What you want to do when learning the CRE is take a piece of paper and write the CRE down vertically. So you have your claim, give a lot of space for your reasonings, and then go to your examples. What I want you to do is start off with the claim at the top, and then in the reasonings, put 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3. And then you have an example at the end, and you can take an entire page for this. What I want you to do is to write down a claim, and then write down 3 reasonings, example, and then just read it out loud. I know this is impromptu communication, but impromptu communication starts at writing. When I was learning to become a professional debater, a lot of the training that we did was in writing, and that's what helped me to conceptualize what a structured argument is supposed to look like. And that's why now it's easy for me to come up with one on the fly, because of my ability to do it in writing. So writing gives you a clear picture of what it's supposed to look like. So like I said, put this into practice and just practice reading out loud. Then what you want to do is, once you get good at this, like you're very good at thinking of things to say on the spot, I want you to practice this with a timer. So give yourself a claim on literally anything. Make it about something you're interested in so that it's easier the first couple of times you practice this. So put a claim down and give yourself 5 minutes to write down reasonings and an example. Then when you get good at that, give yourself 3 minutes to do it so that you progressively get faster. And the more reps you put in, the better you become at this. And then when it gets to a point where you can write these out very easily, don't let yourself write it out. Just think of it on the fly. And honestly, it doesn't take a lot of time to get there. What I would also recommend is throughout these practices, record yourself. In fact, what I would recommend is try one recording right now, something completely random, something like my favorite food, and speak for 2 minutes with a webcam or your phone or whatever. And then try it with the CRE method, and you're gonna see a noticeable difference. Instead of just saying, oh, my favorite food is blah, 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 versus I love hamburgers. Here are 3 reasons why. And then an example. So much better. Okay, but I want you to practice both so that you can see the stark difference. And keep practicing this. Then you can start to incorporate topics that relate more to your work or your professional life, whether it's something that you would sell to a client, something that you would say to your boss at work, and just play around with it as much as possible until it starts to become second nature. That's where you're going to be able to do it very well on the fly. When you get good at this, you're going to start to notice how other people should be using this as well. Because when you're talking to people, you'll notice, oh my God, they're going in circles, and a simple structure could fix the way they communicate right now. That's essentially the end goal. You want to become a snobbish person. I'm just kidding. If you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. Also, comment down below with what your experiences using the CRE method have been like. I would be very curious to know how this went for you. Specifically, whatever industry you're in, it would be cool if you could write that down so that I can see that, oh, this works in sales, this works in IT, tech, marketing, etc. I've had a lot of clients across various different industries, from tech, medicine, to finance, and this does work for a lot of people in many different career lines. Just make sure to share this video with your friends and family so that they can all fix their communication method, and yeah, we'll all get better one video at a time. Just make sure to use whatever I've taught you, put it into practice, and I'll see you next time. Till then, take care.